When's he going? When's he going? Either. Oh, okay. Oop, I don't want to.
Is 8 a.m. So I am going to go ahead and start the recording. Good morning, everyone. We're excited this morning to have Carrie Hurd, who is the director of the Small Business Administration Seattle District Office. That the Seattle office covers how many states, Carrie?
Most of Washington and the 10 North counties in Idaho.
Okay, great. And then also Janie Sacco, who is the Marketing and Outreach Coordinator, Manager?
Specialist.
Okay. For the
upgrade there.
I got the Marketing and Outreach part right. So thank you so much for joining us. I know we had, I think it was $79 million worth of PPP loans in Clallam County alone. So that was critically valuable, of course, to us. And I wanted Carrie to be able to have this opportunity to talk to some of our pretty well connected business folks in our county. We have several on today that help other businesses and that have that are very engaged in different projects within Clallam County. So, and I also see that Randy Johnson is going to be joining us here as well. He is our county commissioner from the Central District, where Port Angeles is centered. So, Carrie, if you would, we've got some background. Okay, there we go. Carrie, if you want to take it away and introduce yourself and a little bit about the program, and then we will open it up to questions, because I know we have lots of folks that have questions that we were saying that wouldn't it be great if we could get Carrie and her team online so that we could get some of those specific questions answered. So Karen, oh, and I also see Ryan Mullane is joining us, so that's wonderful.
Oh, that is great. So hi, Ryan. I apologize. I have lots of windows in my house and it's been smoky here. So I haven't been opening the blinds, and this morning all of a sudden it's sunny and reflecting back at me. So I had to jump up real quick and close those. So thank you for letting us come and join you, Colleen, because this is a great opportunity for us. I do have, if I can share them, I just have a couple of slides, and let's see here. And I just want to touch on a couple of them because I don't want to do the death by PowerPoint. But let me get it up here. I should have had it open. Sorry about the delay there.
And so while she's doing that, Brian, just wanted, if you would please send the economic report about Blackball to Carrie. That is something she'd like to use as she's exploring with the FDIC and Treasury different options that might work for Blackball.
Yeah, so Ryan, I'm really glad you're on because we were talking about some of the things. I think the FDIC can be very helpful in at least guiding us on some vehicles for you. So what I want to do initially is just kind of give you a real quick program overview. You know, many of us know that we do loans, and obviously with the PPP program and the economic injury disaster loans, that has reinforced that SBA is a loan guarantee organization. But what it hasn't done is really given us much of an opportunity to really focus on the other resources that we have every day of every year but can also be very powerful in helping a business grow, pivot, and also thrive even in times like this. So I just want to touch on a couple of these. And this slide is very busy. And the image I want you to come away with isn't the detail of the slide, but the bigger overview that we have voluminous resources to bring to bear. So with our little known program is actually that we are the folks who decide who is a small business, which industries and what size does that industry need to be. We're also the folks that operate and set the policy for the women-owned small business program, some of our socioeconomic programs such as Hub Zone and 8A. And the VA and SBA are working out a deal where eventually we will also be responsible for the service-connected, disabled, veteran-owned small business. Those programs are very powerful when it comes to contracting, and I just want to give an example. Often when the ports do work, they're also looking to be able to provide opportunities for underserved businesses, and maybe the businesses even in your area may be very qualified contractors, and they would like to do part of that work. A lot of agencies will utilize our certifications, and they will also have maybe their own programs that mirror ours. But regardless of whose program they're using, we often work together to be able to identify who these firms are and who are the high quality ones that are capable of doing the work. Sometimes our firms are capable of being the prime contractor, and other times these firms are really great tier 1, tier 2 firms. So it's important that we work collaboratively together with our local and state contracting acquisition folks so that we can make sure that you get what you need from the concept of product, and that our businesses get the opportunity for their fair share of that. We also have our counseling programs, and I know in Port Angeles you guys have the Small Business Development Center. I think the Women's Business Center probably is a little far south for you in Lacey, but we do have a Veterans Business Outreach Center, and all of these groups collaborate so that we reach as many small businesses as we can to provide technical assistance. And the reason I really focus on these counseling groups is if you look simply at the difference between a small business and a very large business, there's really some challenges our small businesses face, not just in that we're smaller. But if you look at the CEO of a large business, they're typically well educated, very well compensated, yet they still have a board of directors to help them steer that company strategically. Transition and look at a small business. Who is the CEO of a small business? That could be somebody who's maybe well educated. It might be somebody who's a technical expert who has no background in running a business. But it could also be somebody who maybe didn't even make it through high school. So utilize these resources, if for nothing else, regardless of the stage of your business, to be kind of that board of directors. The service is free, it's confidential, and what's really important is they can help you validate if you want to pivot or if you want to expand into a new market by offering you research, making sure that you've thought through some of the things that you need to consider. They're not there to tell you it's a good idea or not a good idea. They're just there to make sure that you're going through the process to increase your likelihood of success. And then on the loan side, right now everybody's talking PPP and economic injury disaster loan, but we can do a loan as small as $500 up to $5.5 million, depending on what the project is for and who our lender is. So we have many small micro lenders such as Craft 3, Ventures. I know Ventures is doing some work out there on the peninsula. You have just numerous partners that we all collaborate together. So Some of these partners are very niche, and others are very general. So together, they're a nice tool. We also have bonding, surety bonds, to help the construction companies and government contractors be able to get performance bonds for their work. So, and the way we use those is we're able to use some of your working capital lines of credit, which increases the bond, which helps you do a larger project. And then the last program I think a lot of you have been introduced to recently, and it's the program that we hope that we never have to use. Sorry about that. I meant to turn that off. That's the program that we hope you never have to use. But right now, all of the country is using it. So we have the economic injury loans. And it wasn't too many years ago where we actually had some storms out on the peninsula, and there was some home damage and some business damage where they did get the physical disaster loans. But as you look at the icons on this slide, you'll see Evergreen Business Capital. We have the PTAC, which is the Procurement Technical Assistance Center. You have a lot of resources available that we all work together to help you achieve whatever your goal is for your business. Many of these are funded directly through SBA, and some of them are actually funded through other federal agencies such as the PTAC and Minority Business Development Agency. But they help us together bring a big global resource center to you. So this is just some information. I'll rattle off. I'm going to close this slide so I can see you guys, and we can just talk about these things. But they're resources that we have to help with the recovery assistance. So can I see you now?
Yes.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure if I successfully did that.
Yes.
But so, you know, with right now, I don't know if everyone is aware, but if you get our regular 7A loan, which is just a regular loan, you could buy it for equipment or working capital, that's available. If you get that loan approved before September 27th, SBA will actually pay 6 months worth of those payments. And that applies to our microloan program too. So if you were to go to Business Impact Northwest or Craft 3, that loan would also be paid. And then our economic injury disaster loan, you know, for a while there it was closed. It is reopened, and there is a mechanism that's been put in place that if you've already been borrowing from that program and have a loan, you can go in through a process that we call reconsideration to ask for an increase of that loan. And you just have to justify it. And we have the paperwork you have to fill out and kind of write a cover letter. It's pretty streamlined for a government operation of what you put together to request it, and then it goes through our pipeline to actually get reviewed. And then with the Paycheck Protection Program, I'm hopeful that most of your businesses, if not all of your businesses, were able to take advantage of this program. It did expire August 8th, but it has $120 billion left. And while I think Congress can't agree exactly what they want to do with that money, they do agree that they do want it to go directly to support business recovery. So I think there will become a second phase of that. I guess although it might be considered the third or fourth phase, I'm not sure, Janie, how many phases we've done now, but I think we will see something coming out of Congress to help our businesses survive versus just employ folks. We do have the forgiveness applications. Those windows did open August 10th. Hence, we are having a lot of questions about forgiveness. We're doing a lot of forgiveness webinars. That's why Janie is on the call today, because I know that that's of paramount interest to most of you, and she is our expert on that. And I don't know how many webinars she's done, but it is quite a number. I think it would surprise you how many she's done, and many of those have been with our partners at the SBDC, the Small Business Development Center. Others have been with just chambers direct and lender groups. We have, even though the platform is open, we have kind of cautioned some businesses to not rush to process their forgiveness applications, simply so that we can see if Congress should decide to do, a certain threshold of maybe 100,000, 150,000 and smaller to forgive that. We do know that there is support in Congress for that, but we just don't know if that will actually materialize. There are some folks who are wanting to apply for forgiveness, get that behind them. Some of the lenders may want them to wait. Other lenders are saying, let's get the paperwork in, let's get this forgiven. Some lenders, it's really a very lender specific, whether or not they want to, like if you need a line of credit, and that needs to be extended. Some lenders are saying, sure, let's go ahead, let's do it. Because that debt is on the books for financial statement reasons, there are, it shows as a liability. So there may be some reasons where it makes sense to do the forgiveness first, and then get maybe you need to buy some new equipment so that the debt service ratios make sense. So, so there are some questions about that, and I'm sure some of you will have some of those today. Really, the main point that I want to highlight is that SBA is here for you. With the CARES Act, we've received quite a bit of funding for our resource partners, and the Washington Small Business Development Center did something exceptional with their funds. They actually stood up a Center for Business Resilience. So regardless of where you are across the state, you can email one email, call one number, and what they will do is they'll talk to the business just sufficiently to get an idea of what level of support they need, and they'll get them right to a counselor right away. And it will be an appropriate level to walk the business through what their challenges are, and maybe even if they can take advantage of some opportunities. And the one thing I have to say, that most of the things that have happened with the pandemic has been negative. But one upside that I hope lasts with us beyond the reopening, and as we get behind, this gets behind us, is the collaborative nature. Organizations in Washington have always been collaborative, but we have made so many relationships with lenders who never participated in our SBA programs, and we're hoping we can bring them on for full-time permanent lenders with us. The volume of participation between different chambers, business organizations, it's just phenomenal. And so I'm hoping that that is the one thing that we take away from 2020 that will positively impact us going forward into the future. So with that, I will just let you guys kind of take it away and ask some questions, and I see a couple of questions coming in. So,
okay, great. So let's start. Who will just go ahead and chime in if you have a particular question, if you want to put it in the chat. I see Lena has a question. Lena, go ahead and ask your question of Carrie and Janie.
Good morning, and thank you for being here today. My first question is whether or not interest is being charged on the outstanding balance of the PPP loans until the forgiveness has been processed. Some of my clients are eager to get their PPP forgiven because there's this unknown regarding the interest being charged.
This is Janie. Yes, the interest is accruing from the time of disbursement, and the interest will be forgiven on a prorated basis with the balance of the PPP loan, which is forgiven. So it should go hand in hand, but it is accruing and it is outstanding there. So they need to be aware of that.
But the intention would be that if the full amount of the loan is forgiven, then all of the interest would be forgiven as well. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, and my second question would be, It sounds like the PPP forgiveness applications are being processed by the SBA. Are all of them, or is there still the loan, the clients that have received the EIDL grant? My understanding is that if they've received the EIDL grant, that those are not yet being processed by the SBA. Do we know?
Well, okay. So the portal opened on August 10th, and the SBA, we have been processing a variety of loans for forgiveness. So it's really at the discretion of the lender as to when they want to start processing the loans for forgiveness. So the process here is that you have a borrower, if they're ready to go to submit their forgiveness application to their lender, they can do so at any time, even before the end of their covered period. But they're going to be held accountable for performance in the business through that covered period. All right. Then the next step is the lender reviews the forgiveness application. And as soon as the lender has received a complete application from their borrower, they have 60 days to submit that forgiveness application through the portal to the SBA. And then the SBA has 90 days to act on that forgiveness application. Okay? So that's that's a timeline. What's happening right now is that some lenders are not ready, or they are not accepting the forgiveness applications. And keep in mind that the borrower does have 10 months from the end of their covered period to submit the forgiveness application to their lender. So we have really protracted periods here of performance. In relation to the EIDL advance, what the SBA has instructed the lenders to do is to process the amount of forgiveness that the lender is validating and not do anything with the EIDL advance. And what will happen is the SBA will review, as part of the forgiveness process, both the PPP money and the EIDL advance proceeds. And then the SBA will make a determination of whether or not the presented amount of the PPP forgiven loan is the dollar amount, or if they have to make an adjustment for the EIDL advance. And here's the nucleus of it. When the PPP loans, the applications were originally processed, there was an adjustment for the EIDL, the actual loan, minus or net of the EIDL advance. And then that evolved in April and May over time with the application instructions. And so the bottom line is that the EIDL advance, if it was obtained prior to application for the PPP loan, the PPP loan should have been adjusted down by the amount of the EIDL advance. That way, the full amount, the EIDL advance is forgiven, and then there's the potential for the full amount of the PPP loan to be forgiven. And then if you had a PPP loan issued prior to the time the borrower received the EIDL advance, then when the loan is actually processed for forgiveness, that PPP loan request should be reduced by the amount of the EIDL advance. So if you just think about this in a nutshell, if someone received the EIDL advance prior to the time they received the PPP loan, both the EIDL advance and the PPP loan have the opportunity for full forgiveness. If someone received the EIDL advance after they applied for the PPP loan, then the total amount of forgiven debt was over advanced, and their PPP loan will be reduced by the amount of the idle advance. So there's two paths there, and the SBA is on the application requesting the information about whether or not someone received an idle advance when they received it, and the SBA is going to do that review and make the determination at the time of forgiveness.
So one of the issues too is, what if I'm an accountant, and so I work with lots of clients that have received PPP loans and also idle advance loans, or idle the grant and the loan. So what I'm expecting as I'm working through the PPP forgiveness process is that some of my clients may not have their submission ID or be able to obtain easily their submission ID for their idle advance and or loan. Is there a way to get this information easily if they don't have it?
If they don't have it, where the application number or the ID number is the number that they received at the time of submission of the idle application, and it should be in an email format that they received from the Office of Disaster Assistance. So if they don't have it and they cannot find that email, then what they can do is contact the Seattle District Office and call the number on 206-553-7310, and we can look it up in our loan system and give them the application number. So again, the easiest thing for them to do is go through and look at their emails at or about the time they submitted the application for the idle, and that number is the same. The other thing is that if someone received the actual economic injury disaster loan, then they will also receive the SBA loan authorization, and that has the same number on it. And most of them are starting with number 3, and they're 10 digits. So they have a couple of resources there on their own that they can look to. But again, we are a resource for them and happy to look up the application number as well.
I placed the phone number in the chat. Did I get that right? 206-556-2310? It's
206-553-7310.
Oh,
7310.
not even close.
It's okay.
206
All right.
553
7310.
7310. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, and all they need to do is leave a message, because we are not in the office right now, and we're checking that quite frequently during the day, and we get back to everybody as timely as we can. So maybe they get a call back the next day in the morning, but usually it's the same day.
Thank you so much. And what information would be helpful on a voicemail message? Would it be useful to include like their federal tax ID or business name to research before receiving a phone call back, or?
Yeah, you know what? I tend not to like to have tax ID numbers and social security numbers left on the line, just because of confidentiality issues. So all they really need to do is just leave their name and contact number, and just say, I'm looking for my idle application number, and then we'll have our system pulled up, ready to go. And they just need to be prepared to either provide their employer identification number when we call back. We can also search by the social security number of one or more of the signers on the loan. So we have a couple of options there.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That's really very helpful information.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Colleen, I have a question.
Please.
When we originally applied for the EIDL grants, the 10,000 when, you know, when it was supposed to be 10,000 and it was changed, what were reasons that people were turned down for them? Because I had some people turned down for the grant. What criteria, and would they be able to reapply if something, you know, opens back up?
I'm going to do this. The Office of Disaster Assistance, when they process the application, I'm going to go back. When you process your application through the system online, the grant portion was $1,000 per employee up to a maximum of $10,000. And the application itself was designed for the loan amount, or, you know, the actual economic injury disaster loan. The advance was a secondary issue. And there was, and Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong here, but there was a point where I think if the economic injury disaster loan was declined, then there was a problem processing the advance. The other issue was that if the applicant did not put their bank account information in their application, then there was difficulty in getting the advance ACH'd or deposited into their business account. And so early on, I think that there were some issues with people not receiving the advance, even though they were entitled to it. The other thing is that even if you were declined for the economic injury disaster loan itself, you were still able to obtain the EIDL advance. So I think where there was a little hitch in the get along was if there was a decline in the actual loan and there was not information, and or there was not information in there for the deposit data, then there may have been a problem in the small business owners obtaining the advance. And at a point in time in the processing, the Office of Disaster Assistance made an effort to go in and get advances out to as many of the applicants that were either denied or they requested information on the deposit side to get those advances done. And is that a good summary, Carrie? Did I miss anything?
Yeah, that was a very good summary, Janie. So there was, because we used an industry partner system, it was never designed for the advance. So you had to check this box. Some people unfortunately didn't check the box, or they clicked it and maybe they clicked it twice. So when it's submitted, the box wasn't checked. That was part of the challenge we had. The system had to be retooled a few times, and if any of you were some of our very, very original applicants who maybe applied where you had to actually log on and set up an account, and had a hard time even getting the application in, you've had quite the journey, and so I want to apologize for that. But as they had to transition the systems, some of the data didn't flow over from one system to another, and so some of those had to be manually input. And if it was manually input like on March 20th versus you may have put it in on March 13th, there was some delay there. And there was also, once the declarations, we were pretty early on in the declaration. I think we were the second state. But once the other declarations started to come on, the demand was so overwhelming, it was really difficult for the folks to actually be able to work through them systemically as they came in the system. So any little glitch, whether it was just a typo in your routing number, or it wasn't a business account, it was a personal account, some of those minor little things essentially set the file aside, and the machine was still continuing to process on. Now there is some glimmer of hope. We're starting to hear that there may be some opportunity for Congress to appropriate some more dollars to the advance, to the grant part. I don't know when that will happen or if it will happen, just simply because Congress has different concepts of what should be in the package and what shouldn't. Within it, the House versus the Senate, the Democrats versus the Republicans. But if there is, the files that we do have will be the priority to be funded. So.
Great. Jamie and Carrie, I'm not absolutely positive about this, but with the few people that I helped to include my husband's business with the EIDL and the PPP loan, if the situation occurred, and maybe you can say, no, that's not possible that would have happened that way, but if I believe my husband received the EIDL grant, then applied for the PPP loan. And if that amount wasn't subtracted from the PPP loan amount that was provided by the bank, then how will that be dealt with? Because from what I can tell so far in the loan forgiveness process, they're not asking about that. You've said that the assumption is that would have been subtracted off the PPP amount early on, but is that something a borrower should be concerned with? And if that is the case, that the loan forgiveness is not being subtracted, the EIDL amount isn't being subtracted from the loan forgiveness portion, how should they be dealing with that?
Well, okay, so a couple different questions in there. If you received your EIDL advance prior to the time you applied for your PPP loan, and a negative adjustment to the calculated PPP loan amount was not made, then the SBA is going to review the package and the timing of when the EIDL advance was received, because we can see that in the system. And then at the time of forgiveness, the forgiven amount will be adjusted down. That is the plan. Okay, so for example, if your 2.5 times your average monthly payroll ended up being $20,000 and you received a $1,000 EIDL advance, and you received the advance before you applied for the PPP loan, but you didn't make the adjustment for it in the PPP application. When the SBA reviews the application for forgiveness, the amount of the PPP loan that will be forgiven will be $19,000 instead of $20,000. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the accrued interest on that $1,000 will be part of the repayment requirement at 1% over the remaining life of the loan, the PPP loan. Okay. And so that's the process that is intended to occur. Right. And it will be captured at that point, because again, from the SBA side, the dates and the application documents can be reviewed. And remember, on the forgiveness application, there is the data of putting in the amount of your EIDL advance and your application number, and that helps the SBA systems go in and look at the forgiveness issue at the time that is applied for.
Great, thank you very much. Lori Mittman has put something in the chat, but Lori is an event planner. So Lori, do you want to kind of share your situation and see if they have any advice or suggestions for you? maybe not. She might have walked away. So Lori is an event planner. She does like marathon, plans marathons and things like that. And obviously that is now not able to go through in the phase structure that our state is in. And so she writes that she was one of the unlucky ones who applied for an EIDL advance on March 30th, but never received it. And now, of course, there's no more funds available for the EIDL advance program. And she knows there's still money for loans, but since she's not able to operate, this is the case with a lot of businesses. If they have no revenue, they're very fearful of getting a loan because they don't know that they'll be able to pay that back. If there is more money appropriated for this program, do you envision reopening any element of the grant section from the SBA? And if so, would there be a preference towards businesses that either A, were not able to receive one in the first round, or B, are completely shut down due to the public health emergency?
Yeah, so Colleen, I kind of touched on that just a hair at the end of my last conversation. So we know that there is support to provide some additional grant funds for the EIDL advance. If they do that, the priority will go to either the applicants who had already applied and did not get one in the first round, or there could be some type of revenue test or something that says who is the most needy to get it. What we're seeing in Congress is that there is support, but there isn't agreement. So will that package come out and will that be included? We could flip a coin and probably come up with as accurate of a forecast. But I do believe that SBA, because we know who was stuck in the queue that did not get it. We know that as long as those businesses are still shut down or have reduced revenues, that they will get that first over new applicants.
Thank you very much, Carrie. Appreciate that. We have a SCORE counselor on and some other folks that are funded partially through the SBA and that have been working with lots of different businesses in our county. Mark, do you have any particular questions, or Micah or Rick?
Well, I don't have any questions right now. I mean, our effort has always been to work with the businesses that were trying to get the loans and go through that process. And a lot of them did get help on that thing, which is really good. And most of the businesses that I have worked with have gotten started back up. Some are still struggling a lot, of course, and that's probably goes across the board there. But at this point, we don't know until Congress does something new and gets more money out here. I'm not too busy right at the moment anyway. So.
Well, I'll see if I can drum you up some business. We don't want you to sit idle.
Okay, thank you.
The volunteer SCORE counselor needs to be busy working.
Yes.
Wait a minute. My wife gives me lots to do.
Rick or Micah, do you guys have any questions of Carrie or Janie? I think Rick's still on. He usually has a question or two.
Well, if he is on and he doesn't have a question, I definitely want to do a shout out to him. He helped me work with some businesses that were tribally owned and individually owned so that we could get them eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. So big shout out to Rick.
To Rick, yeah. I know he was very passionate that because they didn't have a UBI number or a EIN as a tribally owned commercial fishing business, isn't that right? That they were not eligible and, you know, really were affected by the entire process where restaurants weren't buying their fish and the like. So, you know, was really, I think both Carrie and Rick are very passionate people about business and helping and equity and all the like. So they changed that's amazing. You were able to change the federal system to be able to modify their processes and accept those types of applications. So that was huge.
Well, we didn't change the federal system. What we did was found alternate documentation that could substantiate and replicate a similar type of document that we would have for a normal non-tribal business. So, and it didn't work for everybody, but it did work for those businesses who had third-party documentation.
Okay.
So.
Very good. So, as you know, as a rural county, we have, you know, we're really blessed more recently that we've been able to get that more visibility, I think, for the assets that we have locally with the Center for Inclusive Entrepreneurship, our SCORE counselor, Mark Hanna, and we have an SBDC advisor here again, which we didn't a few years ago. And so, you know, the PTAC Center is not local. The Women's Business Advisor is not local. Veterans is not. So, you know, having those kind of support systems here is really critical, and we so appreciate the connection with the SBA and your office, and you know, taking the time. And I think doing these Zoom meetings, it's just as easy for you to do one for Collin County as it is downtown Seattle, probably. So that's kind of a bit of a plus that's occurred through this. But you know, we have had a real challenge getting the kind of visibility and support that I think businesses in more urban centers typically receive.
You know, I have to tell you that our office was pretty proactive. We would go out. We've done some different events in Port Townsend, Port Angeles. But it is really nice to be able to really get out there where I can have 3 or 4 meetings in a day to get our message out and the resources available for our small businesses versus getting in that car and driving where I get to 1, maybe 2 if I'm lucky. And then the next day I'm exhausted and probably not as productive as I could be. So again, that's another good thing that has come about that I hope that we retain going forward to the future. And on November 10th, we're actually doing our National Small Business Week Award Gala, which is a celebration of the ecosystem and the businesses that are nominated every year. And we're doing that virtually, so all across the state can participate. We have a biz fair that is typically done in Renton every year, in person, face-to-face. We have booths and you know, a plethora of workshops. We're doing that. We're taking that online through the consortium of partners to deliver that across the state this year. We never would have attempted that had this pandemic not come about. So I'll make sure, Colleen, that you get the flyers for that, and we'll be sending that out. If you haven't subscribed to our Gov Delivery, please do. I think it's sba.gov/updates, and it will take you to the link. We send out great information, great resources, many of our partners' events, which mostly are free. And if they're not free, they're very low cost. So we want to make sure you take advantage of those resources.
So Lena has a question in the chat. She says, at one point I recall hearing that if a business owner did not receive the grant portion of the EIDL, but did receive a loan, that their repayment amount would be reduced by the grant allowed. Is this correct?
So if the EIDL advance was a separate and distinct disbursement from the loan, so if you got a $20,000 loan, but you didn't get a $1,000 deposit, I do not believe that we're going to make you only pay back 19. The disbursements came out of different pots. So please, if that will be the case, then that will be great. But if you plan to pay back the 20, if you borrowed 20, at least that way you won't be disappointed when you have to go make those last payments and they say you still owe that $1,000.
Okay. I have a question generally about preferred lenders for the SBA, with the SBA. Is there a distinct advantage? I'm working with a couple different businesses right now that are considering SBA loans. Some are 504, some are 7A, but is there a distinct advantage working with a preferred SBA lender that does these loans regularly? Or, you know, how would you describe that?
Well, so it has to go more, I think, versus preferred versus where they send the loans into the loan center for approval. We call them delegated versus non-delegated. Really, there's advantages to it. Sometimes it might be faster, but the reality is every bank has a different credit culture. And depending on what your business is, you might need to work with a bank who maybe is a little more hands-on. Maybe that bank will take a little more risk if they send that loan down to the loan center and get SBA's concurrence on the approval. So they might take, you know, a little riskier deal and get it approved, where maybe another lender wouldn't approve it. So there's advantages and disadvantages. What I will tell you is that most of the lenders in your area, they're really pretty good at trying to get the deals done. When they can't get them done, make sure that you call our office or you go to our lender match online, and you can just Google SBA lender match and it will bring up, and you just put a little bit of information in there. We have lenders who have opted into that program. They'll see your information. If they have an interest or potential appetite to talk further, what they'll do is opting in, and then more of your information will be provided to them and you'll connect. So at a minimum, you'll at least get to talk to someone. If no lender matches with your loan, please make sure that you call our office and we'll try to match you with a lender that we think may potentially be interested, or can at least advise you on what to prepare so that you can get an approval. So don't give up. I know a lot of businesses early on, they may have talked to 7 or 8 lenders, and they found the right one. And it's interesting, I'll just share this real quick. Some banks will not do certain types of industries. The bank across the street may very well do that industry because they know how important it is to that local community. So that you just never know who's going to approve that loan.
What kind of industries are on a blacklist for certain banks?
Assisted living is an easy one. So some banks are never going to finance an assisted living project because if that deal goes south, the optics of, you know, evicting those residents is not a risk that lender's ever going to take. Another lender is going to do that because they understand how important that facility probably is to the community and those residents to stay near their family. Mm-hmm. So they're just motivated differently or protecting differently.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some lenders don't want anything to do with restaurants, whether it's full serve, limited service. They've deemed that that industry is, too high of a default rate. Other lenders recognize again that maybe some of those business owners, that is a way for them to come out of poverty, and they're willing to make that investment in them with a good business plan because it's what's right for the community. So it's very interesting. Janie knows a lot more about that than I do.
A few of the other ones that are really challenged are startup businesses, and we're talking about businesses that have not opened their doors. Those seem to really struggle. But where we look to the community resources are organizations like Craft 3, Business Impact Northwest, Evergreen, Business Capital, Ventures, Mercy Corps. Those are the lending partners to help with those startup businesses that are a little bit more risky relative to repayment capacity. The other ones that tend to struggle are businesses that have potential for environmental contamination. And, obviously we're talking about C-store gas stations, but there are some other industries that, if you're looking at a building, could have higher risk potential, like if you're dealing with heavy metal types of firms or dry cleaners, different things that could be environmental contaminants. They struggle to get money to.
Okay. Great. All right. Does anyone else have any questions for either Carrie or Jamie? All right. Well, hearing none, we are just upon 9 a.m. So I think we can sign off just a moment or two early. And I just really want to, again, extend my thanks for taking your time and sharing your expertise and particularly, working so hard for small businesses and small business owners during this public health emergency. There's so much anxiety and so much stress. Having some resources such as yourselves being able to help our business owners as they are employing others in the community has just been so valuable to all of us. So thank you very much. All right. Well, with that, I bid you all a wonderful day, and we'll see you next Wednesday if you're available. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Let's see. Janie, are you still on? No, I will email you.